In wrapping up week one, I wanted to provide you with some items of feedback as well as discuss some housekeeping items so that we know going forward where we stand with some things. With regard to the discussion boards, I think the discussions that we've had for the first 2 weeks of class have been pretty fruitful. Those of you who have been able to formulate your response patterned after the APA model that I provided using citations, I commend you. And those of you who haven't quite gotten the hang of it yet, I would suggest that you take a look at those responses marked as exemplary. Some of them I have noted on the discussion boards. And look at them against your responses and try to see what opportunities you have for improvement. As in general, I would always encourage you to cite everything. Cite, cite, cite. And the reason for citation is twofold. First of all, it gives credit to the original author who's provided the information that you are citing. That lends strength to your argument as well. We've talked about that before. And secondly, it gives others insight as to where you got the information and where they might go to further research a particular topic that you're discussing. So thanks for getting out there early and often. I appreciate that. With regard to communication in general, I've spoken with a couple of you on the phone. Some of you have emailed me when you've had conflicts with work and family and that sort of thing, and I do appreciate that. I think it's really important that we do keep in touch when these things come up. It can make the difference between partial credit for an assignment that is late for a very, very good reason, and the difference between a zero. So I would keep in mind that you can get partial credit for assignments if you communicate with me in advance of when the assignment is due. That in advance part is pretty important. And just pick up the phone, email, Skype, whatever the case is. In terms of the Skype sessions, if you haven't already gotten your equipment squared away, your microphone and your webcam, you will need to do that. The drop-dead date is actually Sunday night when the individual Skype sessions begin. Everybody should, without exception, have their webcam and microphone up and running, and they should also have the Skype platform downloaded and set up. Those of you who have provided me with your Skype names already, thank you. I appreciate that. I've been keeping track of them as we go along. The sessions have been scheduled. There are a few people who have not yet scheduled your sessions, so I would get out there and take a look at the sign-up sheet and get that squared away before Sunday evening. Sunday evening is actually when the Skype sessions begin, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Sunday is completely filled up. So if something doesn't work for you, you seem to have been very good about communicating what works and what doesn't. Keep following that pattern and we will go ahead. The assignment schedule for the rest of the semester is going to be posted in draft format. I've talked with you briefly as we've gone along about the fact that one of the things I'm charged with the responsibility of is looking at this course to see how it aligns within the context of the program and how the curricula meshes together. The future of this course is going to be determined largely based upon what I come up with in terms of recommendations. So as such, I think it has been interesting to look at how you respond to things as students over these past couple of weeks, and it has shaped how I've looked at the assignments going forward. For instance, the last instructor had a weekly journal assignment. As a student, I have never been fond of journaling. I understand the insight that can be gleaned from reflection, and I can appreciate that, but I think weekly journaling can be a little bit oppressive and sort of get to the point of busy work, which I don't like, and I imagine you as students don't like either, given your mix of responsibilities of homeschool and work, just like me. So what I've done in that particular case, for instance, is taken the video learning journal and taken it to a 4-installment assignment, which is worth 25 points apiece, again to be done on video. And the parameters for that will be posted when the assignment is posted. You can look ahead at some of the discussion board threads on the assignment schedule and see what the topics are. I've formulated probably about half the questions. Some of them might not come to fruition until we get closer to that time, depending on where you are and what you've learned so far, and what I feel that you need to learn as we go forward from there. Now you can go ahead and formulate your responses in, say, a Word document for those discussion board questions. I know I always try to work ahead. I'll go out and pull journal articles, formulate my response, and then at the time when the discussion board thread is actually put up, I will go back and look at the response and see if I still agree with what I wrote, check out the argument that I made, is it well supported, well documented, well cited, and polish it up and then post it. You won't be able to post anything in advance, and that is, again, going back to the housekeeping item of keeping threads where they belong. That is also a good instructional design item as well for distance delivery. So keeping all that in mind, when the thread does appear in the appropriate week, you can then post your response. But working ahead in general is not a problem. If I happen to relocate a thread that you've posted, I will try to let you know where it is and why I relocated it if it's not obvious. A couple of you have had postings relocated, and hopefully that hasn't been too confusing. But again, going back to the principle of instructional design with regard to distance delivery, I think it's important to keep things where they belong so that they are able to be easily found by you and your peers as well as for myself. I will be posting a listing of academic journals for our discipline with regard to instructional design, and all of these journals can be accessed in e-delivery from our library. And if you don't know how to do that, I would suggest contacting the reference desk. We have a number of wonderful people there who would be very happy to assist you. There are also some online tutorials, if I'm not mistaken, about research in general, and you might get some benefit from those as well. But I find calling the reference desk when I've gone every place online and still haven't found my answer is always the way to go. They don't mind helping you, and I'm sure that you will appreciate them thereafter because they are good people. I will also be posting lectures periodically with regard to topics of interest that are outlined on the assignment schedule. You can see week by week where I am going in terms of the different topics that we're talking about, and if it's appropriate, posting a lecture to expand on some of those discussion topics is always a very good idea. Throughout the semester, you will notice too on the assignment schedule that I have located a number of platforms, educational platforms, that we'll be using. Most of them are very, very easy and intuitive. I've tried to stick to the ones that make sense and are not difficult to use. So you're going to be kind of jumping in and out of different realms of technology and learning how to use those realms of technology, how they might be useful for you when you go back to your workplace and deliver training and education. Regardless of the setting, you will have tools. Most of them are free. The ones that we will be using will be free. And you will have something packageable that you can put into a portfolio format that you can take to your employer later on. In general, I think by now you've probably figured out my educational philosophy from the student standpoint as well as from an instructor standpoint, is that we as students need to take ownership of our learning experiences. And so what that means is, if you have something due and you aren't able to get it done, communicate with the instructor. If you have something due and you're pressed for time, sometimes other things have to be pushed out of the way. That's just the way it is. I know I experience this quite a bit. I have typically carried a very heavy load of courses since I began the program in January of '08. And I finished my coursework this past summer, so in a year and a half's time I finished approximately 2.5 years of coursework, which means everything has been pretty tight with regard to schedule. I feel your pain. I understand what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it, but I also think it's very important for me as a student to try to do my absolute best work under the circumstances that I'm given. And sometimes I will look back on work products and say, oh, I probably could have done a better job with that, but at the time, that was the time that I had. Did I turn it in on time? Did I hit all the marks that the instructor set forth? I think those are things to keep in mind, and taking ownership of all this is pretty important. Again, that communication piece really falls into this realm, so if you're having issues, if you have questions, if you need additional help with something, there is no reason why I cannot be reached to assist you. Take advantage of it. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. Good luck in week 3.